just a couple more minutes to join and then we'll get started. Okay, I think it's time to get this meeting rolling. So I wanted to start by thanking everyone for joining us this evening. My name is Stephen Tupper. I'm the Transportation Program Manager at the Cape Cod Commission. Appreciate all the faces that I'm seeing on the screen and everyone who's called in for tonight's meeting. I know this has been a long time coming, but we're really excited to join you this evening and talk about complete streets in the town of Bourne. So I'm going to cover a couple of the housekeeping items to start off. Then we're going to have some comments from town staff, and then we'll get into the presentation. So I'll start off with some of those housekeeping items. So first, as folks are joining, you'll see that there's some things up on the screen here I'll read out. There is a link for our project email list, and that's also been shared in the chat as well. So if you'd like to stay current with the project as it goes forward and get updates on new meetings or any items that are posted on the website, please go ahead and click that link and join our email list. For those dialing in this evening or those watching on Bourne Community TV, that email list can also be accessed from the project website, capecodcommission.org/Bourne Complete Streets. So please take that opportunity if you'd like to follow us throughout the process. We really appreciate everyone's participation in the process. So with that, I'll move on to the next slide, please, David, with the meeting announcements. So a couple things to cover. First, I wanted to make sure that if anyone is having any technical issues, please use the chat box. You'll see someone identified as tech support. They're here to help you out if you're having any issues. You may also give us a call at 508-744-1261. That's 508-744-1261, and staff will assist you. We want to make sure everyone's able to participate fully today. I wanted to let everyone know the participants wishing to speak tonight, we are going to be using the raise hand function. So that is in the participants icon on your toolbar, and you can click raise hand, and that way you'll know that you wish to speak. In some versions, you'll see that under reactions. Either way, we'll see your little hand waving, and we'll make sure to call on you. Telephone participants wishing to speak, you can press *9, and that will indicate to us that you wish to speak. And we'll be able to unmute you, or on the phone, you'll be able to press *6 to unmute. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on the Cape Cod Commission website. I also want to let everyone know that this meeting is being live streamed on Bourne Community TV. So thank you if you're joining through that form. I did want to let everyone know that there will be a presentation for the first portion, but we are going to have an interactive program later on in the agenda. So if you're watching on TV and would like to participate in that, you'll see on the screen the Zoom meeting information. You can join via Zoom, and our meeting ID is 961-1903-7671. Passcode is join. We'll leave that up on the screen for a bit in case anyone wants to jot that down and join us later. But with that, I want to move on to the next slide to talk about the project team that you'll be hearing from tonight. So on the town side, you'll be getting some introductory remarks in a moment from town engineer Tim Lydon. Also have a number of other folks on the call today and appreciate everyone joining. I'll try to recognize a few individuals, but I don't want to miss anyone. So I do want to acknowledge a number of folks that we see on the call, including representatives from the town, including the town administrator and assistant town administrator. I see members of the select board as well as the Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning Organization, also joined by individuals from the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, and Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority. So appreciate representation from all of those groups, and really appreciate also Town Planner joining us this evening. Also see representation from the Town Administrator's Bike Pathway Advisory Committee, and I see a lot of folks that probably know their way around the Bourne streets, and that's really the most important thing. So everyone who's here this evening, we certainly appreciate it. You are the ones who are using the streets in Bourne on a daily basis, so we're here to listen to you. We'll be getting to that in a bit, but at first I want to turn it over to Tim Lydon to make some comments on behalf of the town.
All right, thank you, Steve. I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I mean, it's a big night for us. I mean, Complete Streets has kind of been a long time coming. We accepted the policy with the Board of Selectmen about a year ago. We'd kind of been talking about this, I think, for almost 2 years now. So Mass DOT, this is a Mass DOT initiative. This was written into the transportation initiative from the state of Massachusetts in order to get buy-in from local municipalities to basically educate themselves on what a complete street is. I mean, complete street is, a safety measure to accommodate all users of a roadway, right? So we have cars, that's obvious, but what about pedestrians and bike riders or ADA, accommodations, railroad, other transportation accommodations? So this program came across our desk and we thought that this was a really good idea to get into because what you hear tonight is to create a prioritization plan. And that is a required step in the process in order to apply for grant money to do upwards of $400,000 for a project. But the ancillary effect that we're going to have is this beautiful prioritization plan that gives us a good outline of our deficiencies in our multimodal networks. So tonight's actually very important. I just wanted to you guys to keep that in mind, that that's the subtext of what we're here for. And to basically try to give us a good view of what you have seen in this town. Do you see sidewalk gaps that we should connect from different areas of town? Are there beach walkways that we need to improve? Are there stuff that exists that we need to improve, make it better? Do you have better ideas? I mean, this is a really good opportunity to come in and say that. So without further ado, so we have also a complete streets policy that the Board of Selectmen did accept back in last February. So that's on the engineering page of the Town of Bourne website. If you want to look at that while we're going forward, we're all on our computers, which is a nice thing to be because this is an interactive hosted program by the Cape Cod Commission. They did a really, really good job of laying it out on a website, and this will be ongoing for the next couple weeks. So if you guys know anybody that couldn't come here tonight, let them know that they can still participate by coming back to this mapping program that you're going to see the Cape Cod Commission run with. So I'm really excited. This is going to be a really good project for the town. There's other things there's a greater vision that this is kind of funneling into. So just keep that in mind. This is a really important night. I'm really, really proud that we're taking this step forward. So thank you very much to the Cape Cod Commission as well, who is our technical assistance consultant. We got some money from the state to do that as well. So this is a really helpful thing for us. So thank you, Steve, and thank you, David, and all the Cape Cod Commission staff that's been involved.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you for laying out the context there. I do want to highlight that we're serving as a consultant, if you will, for the town of Bourne. It is your town's plan. We're here just to really facilitate the discussion and also to highlight that it comes from funding from Mass DOT. So this is at no cost to the town. But we're certainly happy to be involved, happy to working with town staff and all of the public in the town here who's come out. You will see a number of commission staff throughout the night. I've got one more slide, and then I'll be turning over to David Nolan, Transportation Planner in our office, who is managing this project. You also hear from others in some of the breakout sessions later today. So you'll see in the participants list a good number of folks with CCC staff listed there. So they'll be here to assist us tonight. We have a number of folks ready for that role. So certainly want to acknowledge everyone's here really to take your input. So I want to go over with one more slide to cover the format for tonight, and then I'll turn it over to David Nolan. So first, we're going to provide a little more context about what a complete street is, and then specifically identify what is a prioritization plan and what are we aiming to develop, starting really with the outreach tonight. Dave's going to cover some of the existing conditions in the town of Bourne, some of the great things out there that we want to make sure we preserve, and some of the deficiencies that hopefully some improvements can address. So I'll go through that presentation portion of the agenda. We'll pause for questions and answers. So I do ask for your indulgence to wait until we get through those couple of items, and we'll pause to answer any questions that anyone on the call has to make sure that we're all clear before we go into the breakouts. And in the breakouts, it will be an interactive exercise. We're getting ask you to think of specific locations in the town of Bourne where you'd like to see improvements. So I'm sure you can all have one in your mind that you walk or drive through on a regular basis. So you can start thinking about those, and we'll be putting them right into a map so you can see the direct input feeding into this plan. So again, I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Nolan.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you, Tim, for a very good overview of this project. I think you summarized very well what this presentation is going to outline. We'll go into a little bit more detail on everything you hit on. But as Steve mentioned, I'm Dave Nolan, a transportation planner at the Cape Cod Commission. I've been the project manager of the Bourne Complete Streets Prioritization Plan. I've been working very closely with Tim, as well as the Town Administrators Advisory Bike Pedestrian Pathway Committee to bring finally this meeting to the forefront so we can create a wonderful prioritization plan that the town can actually use to seek funding for important projects across the town. So I really do appreciate everybody's input and ideas tonight, and I appreciate the good attendance that we have. Lots to go over. I just want to remind everyone that we are recording this and it will be up on our website. So for folks that may have missed something tonight, you can go back and look at it over the next month. For folks that may have missed the entire meeting, pass it along to friends and family that weren't able to attend, so that way they can see what we're talking about as well as comment as well. But the first thing I did want to talk about is what is a complete street. I think Tim paraphrased it very nicely. A complete street is one that provides safe and accessible options for all travel modes. Walking, biking, transit, and motor vehicles. And a complete street is for people of all ages and abilities. Complete streets improvements can be large scale, such as a corridor wide improvement, or they can focus on the needs of a single mode, maybe just a crosswalk or a shoulder for bikes and pedestrians. There's lots of benefits to complete streets. Complete streets with a well-designed multimodal infrastructure can reduce motor vehicle crashes related to bikes and pedestrians, can lower the risk for bikes and peds on the roadway. The most vulnerable population, including the seniors, children, and individuals with mobility challenges, those in wheelchairs or with walkers and canes, they can benefit from the infrastructure that improves access for walking and crossing the street. Complete streets have a positive impact to local communities and improve access to bicycling, walking, and transit. Can also positively impact the environment by reducing car trips in a town. So Tim kind of mentioned it, there's a multi-step process here as part of the Mass DOT Complete Streets funding program. The town of Bourne has already gone through what's called the Tier 1 training in Complete Streets policy development portion of the funding program. The town completed the Tier 1 and adopted a policy in September of 2020. And on the next slide here, I do want to talk about the policy a little bit. Over here on the left, it kind of outlines the policy. There's a vision and purpose. They have core commitments, which I noted on the right, which is exactly what a complete street is. The town of Bourne recognizes that all users of all modes, including but not limited to peds, cyclists, transit users, school bus riders, motorists, delivery and service personnel, freight haulers, and emergency responders are legitimate users of streets and deserve safe facilities. On the website that I'll be sharing later, we have a link to the Bourne Complete Streets policy. I'd encourage all folks to take a look at that, especially when going in to add their comments to our mapping tool. Some of this sounds a little foreign. I will go through all of that, the comment tool on the website later in the presentation. So currently, as part of the Complete Streets funding program, we are in Tier 2, which is the Prioritization Plan development. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Once a prioritization plan is completed, the town will move to Tier 3 and actually seek funding for construction project identified as part of the prioritization plan. Up to $400,000 in grant money could be available to the town for construction of projects that have been identified in the prioritization plan. Some details about the prioritization plan. The prioritization plan is a targeted strategy that identifies future multimodal projects to be implemented throughout the town. It's created in coordination with town staff and a public outreach process, which is what we're doing here tonight. And the plan will help the town prioritize projects to receive resources and funding. So some highlights about a Complete Streets prioritization plan. State highways, such as Route 28 or Route 28A, are not eligible for Mass DOT Complete Streets funding. However, any projects that are deemed high priority along these roadways should still very much be included in the prioritization plan. This is a town document. I think it's important to note that even if the highest priority project were to be on one of these roadways that isn't eligible for funding, I think it's very important and still shows the state that there's a need there, and there could be a way for the town to still get funding for a project like that through a different funding stream. The prioritization plan can be based off of a town's capital improvement plan, a local comprehensive plan, any ADA plans, bike plans, or road safety audits that have occurred in the town. The plan will include a public outreach element. That's where we are tonight. It'll also include an outreach element again once we have a draft prioritization plan in place. The plan will identify project details such as project readiness, project cost, and benefits of the project. The plan will prioritize projects based on a set of evaluation criteria, including, but not really limited to, a cost-benefit analysis and understanding the number of users that could be positively impacted by a project. And this is a living document as well. This plan should be regularly updated. Sometimes the town's priorities shift, and I think it's okay for the town to revisit this document every few years and update the prioritization level of certain projects to seek more funding from the DOT. I wanted to also highlight that as part of the Complete Streets prioritization plan, the Town of Bourne chooses the projects that they would like to advance for design and funding, while also controlling all of the design decisions for the project. So the town really does have a lot of flexibility with the projects that they choose and the design elements. One of the keys of the Complete Streets policy through the town is that the town doesn't need to expand every roadway in town to have sidewalks on both sides, shoulders, and crossings everywhere. Basically, the policy states that the town will at least consider Complete Streets elements in any projects moving forward. The idea behind that is if an intersection is being upgraded or a road may be being repaved, the town needs to at least consider the addition of Complete Streets elements to provide accommodations for all roadway users. We understand that the town of Bourne, has a character, it has a feel to it, and some roadways don't necessarily need or deserve a sidewalk and expanded shoulders or whatever projects are available through Complete Streets funding. So the town has the decision there to decide where these elements should and should not be placed. So the prioritization plan will include a list of potential Complete Streets projects and will follow a Mass DOT spreadsheet template. Our goal is to basically and ultimately fill out this large-scale spreadsheet and submit that to Mass DOT, as well as a report outlining our outreach process and existing conditions review. And some of the key components of this spreadsheet, of this template that we will submit to DOT is a ranking of the projects, and including an extensive list of project details, including a description of the project, the begin and end limits of a project, a name of a project, the complete streets project type, and the needs that the project will meet, as well as the complete streets funding request, how much the town would be seeking. As I mentioned, the town is eligible to get up to $400,000 in funding for these projects. It doesn't mean a town can't do a project that costs more. They would only receive up to $400,000. There's also the potential for a town to be able to do a couple of smaller projects that cost less than $400,000. The $400,000 is not guaranteed either. A town could be granted $100,000 to complete one project, but there's different rounds of approval and submittal for project and funding requests. So the town can reapply multiple times for these funding sources. Again, I wanted to hit on the most vulnerable roadway users. That gets outlined as part of the prioritization plan. We want to make sure that any project that we'd be putting in the plan is safe for bikes, pedestrians, children, folks in wheelchairs, those with disabilities, transit users. And as mentioned before, the public process and making sure that we engage with the stakeholders. Making sure we engage with stakeholders, including town staff, local committees, working with the state and the Regional Transit Authority, and as well as coming out to the public on a night like tonight to get feedback and your suggestions about what works currently in town, what would you like to see different in town, and working through those discrete projects that we'd like to have as part of this prioritization plan. The following here is a list of relevant studies that can be referenced when developing the Bourne Complete Streets Prioritization Plan. On this website that I keep talking about, we have links to most of these studies. There's been various roadway safety audits that have been completed in town, and all of those have elements of complete streets and any of the recommendations that have been completed through those plans. The town has a relatively new local comprehensive plan that notes complete streets elements as part of projects for the town. In 2017, the Cape Cod Commission actually completed a Shining Sea Bikeway extension feasibility study, essentially looking at the feasibility of bringing a rail trail to Bourne from the terminus of the Shining Sea Bikeway to the Cape Cod Canal path. I can talk more about the Bourne Rail Trail later. I have a couple slides. The Buzzards Bay to Sagamore transit line, the Cape Cod Canal Transportation Study, which was wrapped up in 2019, as well as the ongoing Cape Rail Study. Another project that is going to come out of the Complete Streets project is the Bourne Bike Plan. Any bike-related comments we hear as part of the Complete Streets process, we're going to help to inform a Bourne Bike Plan, to fold that into the town as well. The Complete Streets, we originally started with doing a Bourne Bike Plan. We shifted priorities once Complete Streets was on the forefront in town, and we're now going to pull a bike plan out of a lot of the comments we hear from the Complete Streets process going forward. I want to give credit to the town as they've currently working on several projects that already include Complete Streets elements. The Bourne Rail Trail, the next slide, I'm going to talk about it extensively, so I won't go into too much here. The median installation on Route 6 Scenic Highway, which is coming in 2024. The Belmont Circle improvements, adding, I know that pedestrian crossings, curb ramps, and a path are to be coming for a project at the Belmont Circle, as well as the implementation of that Buzzards Bay connector service from Buzzards Bay to Sagamore that I mentioned earlier. All of these projects do hit on Complete Streets elements and provide access and safer accommodations for all of the roadway users that could be using the roadway. I think a big project that deserved its own slide here was the Bourne Rail Trail in town. Like I said, I've been working with the Town Administrators Advisory Committee, and David McPherson is the chair of that group. And I've met with them, and I think they're doing great work to bring the Bourne Rail Trail to town. Phase 1 of the Bourne Rail Trail is funded for just over $2 million for the year 2024. Phase 1, for those that may not know, is a half a mile of rail trail that will go from the Cape Cod Canal bike path south to Monument Neck Road. This is south of the Cape Cod Canal. Phase 1 is at 25% design and is on schedule for funding for 2024. Phase 2 of the Bourne Rail Trail is a 2-mile path from the terminus of Phase 1 at Monument Neck Road down to Monks Park at Valley Bars Road. Phase 2 currently does not have a funding year associated with it. That project right now stands at just over $7.6 million. And recently approved was the last one of the last legs of the project, the Bourne Rail Trail, which was being called Phase 4B in the town of Bourne. This project is actually between North Falmouth and into Bourne. This project, like I said, was just recently approved at a price of just over $6 million, and it will actually connect the Shining Sea Bikeway to the town of Bourne. So this project actually starts at County Road in North Falmouth, where the current Shining Sea Bikeway ends, and would go up to Scraggy Neck Road in Bourne to actually get Bourne onto the Shining Sea bicycle network. So, like I said, tonight we want to start thinking about what types of projects we'd like to include in the prioritization plan. Here is just a highlight of some of the projects that are eligible for funding as part of the Complete Streets funding program. I think the first thing a lot of people think about is bikes and pedestrians when thinking about complete streets, sidewalks, crosswalks, curb ramps, lighting. And this doesn't necessarily have to be new construction. It can also be upgrading existing infrastructure, extending a sidewalk that may just end at some point. Multi-use path like the Bourne Rail Trail. I think the Bourne Rail Trail is something that would definitely end up being on this prioritization plan. Bike lanes across town, shoulders or flashing warning beacons for safe crossings for bikes and pedestrians. But we've talked before that Complete Streets is for all roadway users, so transit as well, whether that is upgrading transit stops or installing new transit stops where there may be a need for them, providing safe access to transit stops for bikes and pedestrians and users with disabilities, installing or upgrading lighting at bus stops or along the transit routes. If there's an area in town where there's a congestion problem where a bus is normally letting on or off, is there the opportunity to create a bus pull-off to get the bus safely off the road for people to board and unload? For vehicles as well, updating or installing new traffic signals or roundabouts, as well as doing traffic calming measures such as including speed humps on some more local roads where we want vehicles to travel a little bit slower. Installing speed signs so vehicles, one, see how fast they're going, and two, they can see how fast they're supposed to be going. Shoulders, obviously, for bikes and pedestrians to have a safer place to walk, maybe where there isn't the room for a sidewalk on a certain road. Turning lanes for vehicles as well to get them off the roadway and allow other vehicles to continue to travel without creating congestion or pinch points. Those are lots of different projects. And as you can imagine, there are some projects that can be very costly. The point of the prioritization plan is to help identify which projects are highly rated and most beneficial. So there's a whole suite of projects that are short-term and lower costs. Sometimes signage or paint on the roadway can go a long way. Widening a shoulder a little bit or installing warning beacons at crossings and ramps. Adding bike racks or fix-it stations along the paths or major cycling areas can go a long way to providing access for folks to get to and from locations. Signal timing adjustments. Sometimes it doesn't need to just be a whole redo of an intersection. It can just be adjusting the timing of a signal, which can free up congestion and move people along more easily. There's also the long-term higher cost projects, such as multi-use paths, sidewalks, and installing new lighting. Any road widening for bike lanes or shoulders would be a longer-term higher cost project as well. And anything that it would involve an intersection improvement, maybe like a signal or a roundabout, those are high cost long-term. no project is really off limits at this point, especially when we're talking about ideas. So if there is an intersection that someone thinks should have a signal, we'd love to hear that. If there's an intersection that has a signal that someone thinks should just be retimed or, upgraded, that's definitely something we want to hear as well. So where are we in the process of the prioritization plan? After this, we're going to do, we've done the commission and existing conditions review, and I will show some maps in a little bit that outline the existing conditions in town. But tonight, the big thing is the virtual brainstorming session. Typically, in person, we'd be having maps spread out on tables. We'd have staff members at every table. We'd have our sticky notes, pens, markers, and we'd just have a conversation with everyone that's in the room, talking about where the challenges are in town. Where do you see complete streets needs in town, and what types of projects do you want to see on your street, the streets you travel, and throughout town? What we'll be doing after this meeting and after our comment period closes is we will have a draft list of projects that we heard, not only tonight, but over the next month. And we will bring that to the town and we will discuss with town staff and start talking about all the projects and the comments that we heard. What we'll end up doing is creating a draft prioritization list. We will come up with some evaluation criteria with the town. Like I said, a cost benefit analysis of some sort, looking at the number of positively impacted users of the road or the project. And what we plan to do is later this spring is have another public meeting where we will present a draft prioritization list. The goal for that meeting will be, like I said, present the draft list and try to make sure we nail down the rankings. We want to know which project is the #1 priority to everyone in town, and work our way through a list so that way we have a final list, a prioritization list, and report that we can submit, that the town can submit to MassDOT, and hopefully get approval from MassDOT to then start seeking funding for these construction projects. A lot of information has just been thrown at you, especially if this is a new topic. I want to pause here and take any clarifying questions about the prioritization process. If there's a question that maybe I can't answer, I'm happy to have Steve and Tim, who you've also heard from tonight, chime in to help me out if there's any other questions. But at this point, we will do, I should mention, after this, we will move forward with our existing conditions review. I will show those maps and this website, the comment tool, and then we will move into our breakout rooms to start discussing potential projects and looking at a map of the town and starting to actually piece together a prioritization plan here. But with that, I'll take any questions at this point that anyone may have.
I'll call out folks as I see their hands go up, Dave. So I see first Vicky, and then after that it'll be Richard Conran. And you should be able to unmute yourselves now to speak. So the floor is yours, Vicky.
Okay, I'm with the Disability Commission of Bourne. Some subjects we've brought up for improvements in town are to remember the needs of the blind and hard of hearing, and that would be an issue on the improvements of crosswalks.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that comment. That's certainly something we want to make sure we think about throughout the process as everyone who's on the roadway, and not everyone uses it in the same way. So we certainly appreciate you voicing that consideration, and absolutely that's something we want to make sure we take forward throughout this process. So thank you very much for that. So I see 2 more hands. So next we'll go to Richard Conran and then Selectman McDonald. So you should be able to unmute yourself, Mr. Conran.
Can't do it.
Oh, there you go. We hear you loud and clear. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Private roads. Does this project allow private roads to be developed, or is it only roads that are accepted by the town?
So unfortunately, this is going to probably be restricted to town-owned properties. That would be the easiest way to go forward with these projects.
Okay,
Our
Thank you for,
policy does address the design of new private roads that we would consider complete streets policy, but that's about it.
but the town would have to accept the streets before they would be able to be, go for these priority plans or development plans.
At this point,
Right.
yes.
Yep, okay, thank you.
thank you for that question and for that response, Tim. I do want to make it clear that we want to hear about any roads, any challenges you see out there, but Tim's absolutely right. The path forward would be a little different on a private roadway. So certainly a consideration and one of those unique things that we have in this area. So next up in terms of questions, I have Selectman McDonald, followed by MJ Mastrangelo.
Hi, so I know I have Selectman McDonald on there, but speaking as a citizen here in Bourne, specifically, I have issue with the Mass Highway process. For instance, Belmont Circle. They had complete plans and very little input from the town of Bourne. And when they came before the selectmen, there were a number of issues brought forward, mostly safety issues. And clearly, none of them are going to be addressed. One of the biggest ones was the speeding problem on Scenic Highway, where more than one person has been struck by a car that's been traveling more than 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. And that's just Scenic Highway. That also includes a safety issue with the speed of vehicles coming off of Route 25. There's very little going into the warning area and trying to reduce the speed. And that kind of parlays into Scenic Highway, putting a median down the middle. We're going to put a median down the middle to try and make it so that traffic can go faster, but any property on the roadway that could be developed in the future is now going to have a reduced possibility for income or construction, because there's a median down the middle, and we're going to have cars racing down that highway faster than they do now. And there's been a problem with trying to reduce the speed limit on that road to begin with. I'm just hoping that there's more input on this. I think it's a real problem that Mass Highway clearly has a plan to put a median down the middle, but there's very little outreach to the folks that live on that road, the police officers that patrol that road. I personally used to be a police officer and patrol the road. I'm very aware of the area, and no contact has been made. So I know this is a complete streets project, but it does parlay into all of that, because that's a major connection area from one part of the town of Bourne to another. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments, individual McDonald. So I want to first acknowledge that absolutely those are really important projects, so that the town should be at the table for all the discussions. Day to day, I deal a lot with Mass DOT projects, so I acknowledge the challenges in terms of coordination, and certainly there's work to be done in making sure that all the voices are heard in that process. So that's something I'd be happy to continue to work with town staff. I know that they're doing their best as well to make sure that everyone has a voice at the table. I do want to make the one distinction, which I believe you understand as well, is that this specific process that we're talking about here is being driven by the town. The projects would be developed by the town, and the design would be developed, and all the decisions would be at the municipal level. So this project is very clearly municipally driven, but I certainly acknowledge all those challenges that you're noting.
Yeah, and I think they parlay into each other, and we want to make sure that they don't fight each other. If we have a project that we're trying to do, and Mass Highway is going to override part of that project, we want to make sure we have a good voice.
Absolutely. It's about networks and connectivity, so we want to think about that all together. So very much so. So I have one more hand up when we'll go there, but I did want to let everyone know that there'll be a couple of staff members in every breakout room as well. So if you have questions that you want or that come up later, we can certainly handle those as well. But next up, we have MJ Mastrangelo.
Thank you. I have two comments. One has to do with the unaccepted roads issue. So we have probably 50 or 60% of the roads in Bourne are unaccepted, but they're open to public access. So it's kind of a conundrum. And so it would be helpful, I think, for us in future evaluation of this to have a list of accepted roads and a list of unaccepted roads so that we can know where we can put the funding. The other question, that's just one comment. The other thing is, I'm really interested in this shoulder concept because I've been in a rural town. I lived in Southborough before, and we attempted to put in sidewalks, and it was such a challenge. It's old trees, and a sidewalk requires like 5 feet, and it's really difficult in a old New England town to do that. So when you're thinking about shoulders, how much space do you need for a shoulder? And it's just helping me to think about prioritization of when I do things. Is it a small amount? I mean, is it like 1.5 feet? Is it 2 feet? What's the shoulder distance that you usually use?
So thank you very much for those comments and questions. So I'll tackle your first question first. In terms of unaccepted roadways, certainly we'll work with town staff because we understand that's an important consideration, and we'll fold that into the process however we can. Your second question is very interesting about shoulders. Certainly the appropriate design treatment depends on the roadway speed and volume. So there's not necessarily a single answer to your question there. Sorry, just a little background. There we go. So it would be a little bit case dependent. I will say that from a safety perspective, a sidewalk is certainly preferable for the safety of pedestrians, so vehicles don't run up into that space that's dedicated for a pedestrian. But where it's infeasible to do that for a variety of reasons, like the ones you noted, some shoulder is better than no shoulder. If you really want a full accommodation and really a safe space for bicyclists, you're going to want about 5 feet in the shoulder. But that's not to say that a lesser width, it doesn't have some value. So again, I apologize, I can't give you a specific answer, but generally 5 feet is what we'd be looking for a bicycle accommodation. That could also, in some cases, accommodate a pedestrian, but depending on the volume and speed of the roadway, there's certainly instances where you want full separation for bikes and pedestrians. So happy to talk site specific on later.
So what do you do on like a scenic road? I mean, because we have so many most of our public roads, I think a lot of our public roads where we'd actually put a shoulder are scenic roads, and that creates a whole nother conundrum. So, I mean, 5 feet will probably destroy the scenic portion of the road. So can you do less than 5 feet? I mean, I'm thinking particularly County Road in Bourne. I mean, there's a lot of bikes, Scraggy Neck Road in Bourne, there's a lot of bicycles. If we had 2 feet, it would be helpful. I mean, if we had 1 foot, it would be helpful. So is there flexibility, or are there requirements like ADA requirements that make it have to be a certain thing?
So another great question, and unfortunately the answer is quite similar. You have to look at the very specific conditions of the roadway, but it is fair to say 2 feet is better than 0 feet. So if that's what you can get, that's what you can get, but it does not meet ADA requirements. If you're trying to put an ADA accessible path, and in many locations that is absolutely what you need to do, then that a small shoulder is not sufficient. You can't get a wheelchair down there. It doesn't provide safe access. So you really have to think about the context of the location and try to do as much as you can given the constraints of that location. So again, apologize, I can't give you a specific answer because it is context sensitive.
It's very helpful because I need that feedback in order to make my comments in the breakout. So thank you very much. That's really helpful.
Thank you very much. I do see one more hand up, and we'll tackle that. And then I know we have plenty of opportunity in the breakouts as well. So I see a hand raised from M. Emmons. M. Emmons.
Yes, good evening. My question is in regards to, can this process make priorities of traffic flow patterns, such as certain streets one way, and make recommendations for traffic flow, or are traffic flow patterns out of the purview of this process?
Steve, I can take that one if you'd like. Those are not, those are definitely something we can think about. I know that in our Orleans Complete Streets process that we just went through, one of the recommended projects that we heard from the meeting was looking at traffic circulation in the downtown area and making some two-way roadways, one-way travel around the center of town. So I think that those suggestions are welcomed. I'd love to talk about those, especially in the breakout rooms, what locations that you might think those would be beneficial in town, but those are not off the table necessarily, no.
You know, if I could, David, Glenn Cannon, Assistant Town Administrator. There was a project right here in Bourne that was from a two-way street to a one-way street in Adams Street. Steve might remember this. Certainly Dr. Lev Malikoff remember this. The town was able to make that into a one-way street. And then, you know, you don't need the 24 feet of pavement there. We're able to put in bike lanes on that road. So, you know, things like that, I would put them into the plan also. Again, they might not be equal up for this funding, but, you know, for a can of paint, those are kinds of things that we should be looking at.
Excellent, and certainly a great project and a great example of a low-cost improvement that improved the roadway for all the users. So yes, for sure. I think that's all the comments I see at this point, Dave. So I'll put it back to you, but then remind everyone that in breakout sessions, we're absolutely here to answer questions there as well. So back to you.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone for your comments. Like I said, I know we're recording this and everything, but we still have folks taking notes, so that way we can dive deeper into some of these comments and questions that folks may have had. What I wanted to do now is start discussing and going over the existing conditions in town. We have an excellent GIS team at the commission who have put together an awesome tool, a mapping tool for us to look at existing conditions, as well as take the comments that we want for this project. So we have an existing map, an existing conditions map that'll show traffic volumes, bike pedestrian crashes, traffic signals, and so on and so forth. What I'm actually going to do is open that tool now and share that with everyone. Steve, let me know if you can see the tool.
There we go. It's up on the screen, Dave.
Excellent. Okay. So we've created this little Bourne Complete Streets Prioritization Plan portal that will be available on Friday to everyone. We will put it up on the commission website and folks will be able to go in and use it. Basically, this tool here summarizes the entire presentation that I just walked through. So it shows our project team, and then there's these tabs right here. What is a complete street? You can select that. It gives you our definition that we had earlier. It shows, you know, our benefits that we talked about. It has the tiers for the DOT funding program with a link to the Bourne Complete Streets policy, as well as a link to the Mass DOT Complete Streets website. What is a prioritization plan? It gives you that definition that we talked about earlier. It shows you the process and the next steps as part of the prioritization plan. Some of the requirements and some of those notes, how I mentioned state highways and some of the project details. Here, actually, here's a good picture of Adams Street that Glenn just mentioned a moment ago. And it has a link to some of these projects that I mentioned earlier in the presentation in case folks want to take a look at those. Shows the ongoing projects in town, our prioritization plan template, and it shows the Complete Streets project types. I shared these earlier with everyone. Short-term, low cost, long-term, high cost projects. So the next tab is the Bourne existing conditions. And this is what I've kind of been alluding to with this mapping tool that we have. It'll take an extra second probably to load since I'm sharing it with so many folks tonight. But here is the map as it loads its layers. It's Bourne specific. We just did a Falmouth Complete Streets prioritization plan last month, and we made one of these for Falmouth too. If you were to go to theirs, it would bring you right to Falmouth. But here we have Bourne, obviously. If you come in, there's some tabs right here on the left for different layers that we show. This first one that auto-populates is the bike, pedestrian, and transit layer. So it shows you in the white line these existing transit routes. These yellow lines are existing paths. You can see those along the Cape Cod Canal. I'm just going to try to zoom in a little bit. Your zoom feature is up here on the left. It's kind of a how-to tutorial right now too. I encourage everyone to play with this once it's up on the website before coming into our public comment tool, which I'll show in a few minutes. But there's these different tabs here on the left that you can select, and it'll zoom you to different parts of the town and show you some information. I just selected the sidewalks and destinations layer. It brings us to Buzzards Bay for this one, but it shows us the existing sidewalks here in this green, and then it shows with these red and blue dots different activity sites in town that folks may have some sort of reason to access. You can, like I said, zoom in and out and go down to your village or your neighborhood to see where the sidewalks are. Or see, this is very helpful in figuring out where the gaps in the network are as well, especially if you can find a roadway that has a sidewalk for a portion of it, and then it may end, trying to see why that may be. And this could probably help inform us to try to fill some of those gaps that users may have. This next one is more technical. It's a road classification layer. This kind of tells us the type of vehicles and the usage of roadways. This is more, this is more state focused. So I don't think it's as necessary for us to consider as part of this project, but nonetheless, it does show the classification of the roadways across the town of Bourne. Another very interesting one is the crashes and traffic volumes. In these orange dots from 2012 to 2017, that was the most recent complete set of data we had. The state has to approve crash data, and that's what we had at this point. This shows all the bike and pedestrian crashes that occurred in the town of Bourne during that time period. It also shows the average daily traffic on the roads in Bourne. Obviously, Route 28 here is the highest and has that highest, darkest line, down to some of the more local roads where you see less than 5,000 vehicles a day. Again, I encourage folks to come in and play with this, to take a look at this. If we can see a concentration of bike and pedestrian crashes in a portion of town, maybe there's something that could be done differently in that area to make it safer for those vulnerable roadway users. And then lastly, we can go back to our bike, ped, and transit layer as well. So that's basically the existing conditions review. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now. And oops. All right. Steve, let me know if you can see the presentation. I think you can now.
Looks good, Dave.
Okay. So now we're basically at the exciting part of the meeting. If the first half wasn't exciting to you, this is the opportunity for us to hear from all the folks who come out tonight. We'll be heading into some smaller breakout rooms. I think we're going to do 3 rooms, all led by myself, Steve, and Colleen Medeiros from the commission. What we plan to do is walk you through the public comment tool, which is on that same website that I was just walking through. We'll give a quick tutorial of how to use it, and we can take any questions about how to use it. But what we want to start to understand is what's written on this slide right here. These are the types of questions we want folks to start thinking about. What roadways are challenging for motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, and any other roadway users that we've mentioned tonight? Where could safety be improved across Bourne? What projects would you prioritize? Is there a particular project that you think is the highest priority, or is it a suite of projects that you think should be considered across town? Are there any new or different suggestions? I called one out here in Orleans. One of the projects that they wanted to prioritize was the installation of bike lockers at beaches to provide bikes and bicyclists the opportunity to more easily bike to the beach and spend the day there, so they could leave personal belongings behind at a locker at the beach, getting cars off the road and out of the parking lots. Are there any places where bikes and pedestrians could more easily access? And when I say bikes and pedestrians, I do mean all of the vulnerable roadway users we mentioned earlier. Are there specific challenges for different groups? Children, seniors, people with mobility challenges, seasonal workers. We have a very large influx of seasonal workers down here in the Cape over the summer. Transit users, what types of challenges do they face, and what types of projects would make their lives easier accessing different locations in the town of Bourne? I wanted to note that we're going to do a walkthrough. We'd love to hear from everyone in every breakout room. We understand that some folks don't feel the need to talk and like to just sit and listen and observe, and that's fine. This public comment tool will be open through March 21st. We encourage everyone at this meeting to pass it on to those that couldn't attend. I encourage you all to go into it over the next month. Hopefully, you can go in a few times. If you don't think of everything tonight, sleep on it a few times. You can go in and add comments to the tool as well. I know sometimes technology can be a bit challenging or aggravating. If you can't figure out how to use the tool, you're more than welcome to give me an email or a call and let me know what your comments are through the 21st, and we will certainly add them to the map for you. And basically at the end, when we're ready to create our list, we will go through the map and see all the projects that everybody has identified as some sort of priority in the town. So we can talk about these questions again once we get into our breakout rooms, but I don't know, Steve, if you wanted to say a couple things. I think from the breakout room, the meeting is more or less over. Once we're done talking in there, we'll stay and chat with folks as long as they'd like, as long as we're still having some good ideas and good conversation. We'll have behind the scenes note takers. Not everything can necessarily be associated with a point or a line on the map. So we'll have folks in each breakout room recording everything that's said, so that way we don't miss anything when we are creating this plan. Steve, if there's anything else that I'm forgetting.
I think you're good, Dave. I'm just about to push the button to send everyone to the breakout rooms. You don't have to do anything. If you click accept, you'll move right into it. Otherwise, you'll be pushed into the breakout room. I did want to thank anyone who's watching live on Bourne Community TV. We will be ending the live stream there. If you'd like to join us in the interactive session, there's information on how to join at the project website of Bourne Complete, capecodcommission.org/Bourne Complete Streets. If anyone's watching this recording later on, as Dave noted, the public comment tool will be open until March 21st, so you're welcome to add ideas that way. So with that, we'll be joining in the breakout rooms, and if I don't see you in the breakout room, I just wanted to again thank everyone for joining us this evening. Look forward